Hello and welcome to Resemblance. Valerie is DJ and framed by her family to steal her access. After winning freedom, she gathers everything, imposes their dream, and makes them lose everything. Absolutely, this story will shock you.
The sharp metallic clang of the holding cell door echoed as the officer slid the rejection paper forward. My name is Valerie. I am 29 years old, currently sitting quietly in oversized, uncomfortable prison clothes. I tried desperately to process the incredibly harsh words that the officer just relayed directly from the very people who gave me life. The tired police officer looked at me with deep pity before repeating their exact unforgiving message through the thick glass. Your parents explicitly said to let her stay in jail because they will not bail her out just to teach her a lesson. My own parents completely refused to sign the emergency bail documents, declaring coldly that I should rot in this cage to pay for a baseless crime. Pure, absolute horror washed over me when I remembered the authorities extracting a hidden package of contraband from beneath the spare tire of my car. That was a concealed compartment I had never even touched or opened during the entire time I owned that vehicle. The most devastating truth finally crashed down upon my shoulders when I realized my own family members had orchestrated this flawless trap to eliminate my presence from society. They intentionally planted that illegal substance to lock me away so they could smoothly execute a highly malicious financial scheme without any interference. I sat in that suffocating darkness, making a silent vow that the exact moment I stepped out of this filthy place would be the exact moment they permanently lost absolutely everything. What I ultimately did the day after I gained my freedom did not simply prove my innocence, it completely collapsed their entire world, leaving them wandering the streets homeless. 10 years of my youth consisted of working 14 hours every single day to build a commercial real estate development company in Denver from absolutely nothing. The arduous journey required sacrificing my personal life to navigate ruthless corporate negotiations while securing complicated funding when nobody else believed in my long-term vision. I dedicated relentless effort to successfully acquire a prime suburban plot of land that was situated right on the verge of a major city zoning approval. This specific property was heavily projected to experience a massive surge in market value within the next 30 days due to upcoming municipal infrastructure projects. Securing that particular piece of land was the ultimate culmination of my entire professional career thus far. In stark contrast to my relentless professional dedication, stood my brother Brandon, who had foolishly entangled himself in a catastrophic financial debt with dangerous underground loan sharks. He squandered his own opportunities on reckless gambling habits before digging a hole so exceptionally deep that standard banks completely refused to look his way. He was actively facing the severe threat of violent physical retaliation or immediate criminal prosecution if he failed to produce the full repayment amount within a strict 30-day deadline. Instead of taking personal responsibility for his disastrous actions, he cowardly ran straight back to the protective shadow of our family home, expecting a miraculous financial rescue. My father, Richard, and my mother, Susan, constantly barged into my private office to inflict relentless psychological pressure regarding this increasingly dire situation. They aggressively bypassed my receptionist on multiple occasions to forcefully demand that I quickly liquidate that highly valuable suburban plot immediately. They desperately needed me to generate the exact cash required to save the life of their precious youngest child, without caring about my massive corporate losses. Dad would aggressively pace around my executive desk shouting about unconditional family loyalty, while Mom sat in the corner wiping away calculated tears to guilt-trip me into complete submission. They genuinely believed my corporate success existed solely to function as an emergency bailout fund for his continuous lifelong failures. I absolutely refused to entertain their utterly unreasonable demands to sacrifice my hard-earned assets for someone who never respected a single dollar he touched. I clearly told them, looking straight into their eyes, that I would never compromise my business integrity or jeopardize my employees' livelihoods to rescue a chronic gambling addict from his own mess. Consequently, I immediately contacted my senior corporate banking representatives to lock down all financial access to the company accounts to prevent any unauthorized withdrawals. I systematically revoked every single secondary authorization protocol to ensure my family could not manipulate the banking system or touch a single penny without my explicit legal signature. The final explosive confrontation occurred late Friday evening inside my enclosed glass conference room, where voices were raised fiercely while vicious accusations were thrown across the large mahogany table. Dad slammed his fists violently against the polished wood, demanding that I remember who raised me while calling me an ungrateful daughter. Mom bitterly accused me of being a greedy, heartless monster who would rather see her own sibling end up in a wooden casket than lose a meaningless piece of dirt. I maintained my absolute composure while calmly packing my personal documents into my leather briefcase without uttering another defensive word to fuel their rage. I knew arguing with their completely delusional entitlement was a massive waste of breath because they would never see my perspective. The heated argument ultimately concluded with the three of them standing closely together, glaring at me in heavy silence. They watched me walk toward the exit door with eyes full of utter desperation, mixed with a chillingly cruel calculation that I entirely underestimated at that exact moment. 48 hours after the heavy iron doors locked behind me, the complete truth regarding the sophisticated trap set by my own family finally began to surface through scattered pieces of information. I had to meticulously ration every single rare minute of my permitted prison phone calls to transmit urgent details to my best friend Kendra. She remained the absolute only person I entirely trusted to properly investigate this sudden catastrophe from the outside world without raising any unnecessary suspicion. I clutched the cold plastic receiver tightly against my ear while frantically explaining the bizarre circumstances surrounding the illegal substance found inside my vehicle. The limited phone time forced us to communicate strictly in rapid facts, rather than wasting precious seconds on emotional breakdowns. The concrete walls of the holding facility felt increasingly suffocating as I calculated the immense financial damage my family could inflict within a few days. Kendra answered my third desperate call with a noticeably urgent tone, vibrating through the poor telephone connection connecting us. All the corporate transfer documents have already been officially processed because they meticulously planned to steal the entire company several weeks ago, she explained quickly. Kendra utilized her extensive corporate contacts to quickly discover that the comprehensive share transfer contract was actually drafted by the private lawyer representing Mom and Dad a long time ago. The private lawyer had drafted these documents using outdated signature samples they had stolen from my desk during their previous office visits. They mapped out every single legal loophole required to bypass the standard corporate board approval process without my physical presence. They had deliberately prepared all the necessary legal paperwork in advance, while patiently waiting for the perfect opportunity involving my forced disappearance from the corporate office. Their sheer level of premeditated calculation sent a freezing chill down my spine as the full picture of their betrayal became undeniably clear. They knew I would never willingly hand over my assets to save Brandon from his underworld debts under any circumstances. Therefore, they decided the most efficient solution was to permanently remove me from the equation by framing me for a severe felony. I immediately instructed her to shift her entire investigation toward a specific location near my main office building to find the truth. You need to try your absolute best to get the security footage from the east parking lot, I demanded firmly through the static noise of the prison phone. Finding that specific recording is our absolute only chance to effectively reverse this horrifying situation before they completely drain the corporate accounts. While I remained completely isolated from the outside world inside that damp cell, my family actively colluded with a deeply corrupt public notary to bypass standard legal protocols. This corrupted notary deliberately ignored the strict state identification laws to process the unauthorized transfer of my multi-million-dollar commercial assets. My parents intentionally chose a holiday weekend to execute this fraudulent transfer, knowing the regulatory oversight agencies would be severely understaffed. They heavily paid off this unethical official to seamlessly finalize the blatant forgery of my personal signature across massive stacks of fraudulent corporate paperwork. Brandon was rapidly acquiring total legal ownership of my lucrative commercial real estate properties without triggering any immediate banking alerts or legal red flags. Kendra had to fiercely race against the clock to collect any surviving security footage from the independent retail stores situated directly opposite the east parking lot. She spent several exhaustive hours aggressively persuading skeptical local store owners to let her review their private surveillance archives before their daily security systems automatically deleted the recordings. Kendra had to offer a substantial amount of cash to a reluctant store manager just to gain temporary access to his security computer room. She meticulously scanned through hours of grainy video files searching for the exact time frame when my vehicle was left unattended during the company dinner. She desperately needed to locate the exact decisive moment demonstrating that I never touched the trunk of my car on that fateful night. She watched the monitor intently until she spotted a familiar figure approaching the rear of my vehicle, wearing a dark hooded jacket. The digital timestamp on the video file perfectly matched the exact time my family claimed they were inside the restaurant ordering dinner. Finding that specific visual evidence would conclusively prove my absolute innocence regarding the illegal contraband planted inside my vehicle by my own flesh and blood. She finally managed to secure a clear digital copy of the surveillance footage showing exactly who opened my trunk in the darkness. That specific Friday morning officially marked the momentous day I finally stepped out of those freezing iron gates thanks to a massive bail payment provided by emergency legal assistance. Kendra drove me straight from the county detention center directly to the private corporate office of my lawyer Sterling, so we could immediately review my entire financial system. We urgently needed to audit every single corporate account because I strongly suspected a catastrophic breach regarding the main company real estate assets. Sterling looked exceptionally grim while pulling a thick banking folder from his locked drawer to place it heavily onto the polished oak table between us. He deliberately opened the confidential file to reveal a comprehensive commercial loan application carrying my perfectly forged signature across multiple consecutive pages. Sterling pushed the extensive document forward while looking directly into my eyes to deliver the deeply devastating news regarding my business. This massive loan application was actually pre-approved by the senior banking executives over an entire month ago, he explained clearly. They were simply waiting for your sudden disappearance to finalize the ultimate notarization process without raising any internal banking red flags. The horrifying truth immediately clicked inside my mind regarding the true motivation behind my unexpected arrest earlier that week. Throwing me into that miserable jail cell was never just about punishing me for refusing to help Brandon with his massive gambling debts. It was a highly calculated stepping stone designed strictly to buy them enough uninterrupted time to legitimize their blatant forgery. Mom and Dad successfully transformed my most valuable suburban land plot into completely legal collateral to secure the cash needed to save Brandon from his underworld creditors. The sheer audacity of their malicious financial scheme made my blood boil violently beneath my skin while I stared at the fraudulent paperwork. I slowly tapped my fingers against the hard wooden desk while carefully processing the immense magnitude of their ultimate family betrayal. Sterling reached for his telephone receiver, preparing to contact the local authorities regarding this massive corporate fraud before they could spend the money. I immediately raised my right hand to stop his movement before giving him a much different strategic instruction regarding our next move. Do not call the police just yet, because I want them to firmly believe they have completely won this battle, I stated decisively. I want them to fully experience the intoxicating feeling of standing on the highest peak before I personally push them down into the absolute abyss. We spent the next several hours meticulously tracking the digital footprint of the newly dispersed banking funds across various untraceable financial institutions. The massive sum of borrowed cash had already started moving sequentially through multiple intermediate shell accounts directly connected to notorious criminal loan sharks. My parents were systematically wiping out the enormous debt belonging to Brandon, using the exact corporate wealth I had sacrificed my entire youth to build. Every single fraudulent transaction on that computer screen solidified my cold determination to completely destroy the comfortable life they were currently enjoying. Sterling strongly advised me to maintain absolute emotional composure during this highly volatile period to avoid making any foolish tactical mistakes. He needed my complete cooperation to meticulously prepare a much larger legal net capable of trapping every single individual involved in this real estate fraud ring. We began drafting a series of devastating federal injunctions designed to permanently freeze their stolen assets at the exact moment they felt most financially secure. My ultimate retaliation required flawless execution to ensure that neither Brandon nor my parents could ever escape the severe legal consequences of their unforgivable actions. 72 hours before the grand corporate announcement party, my dedicated associates and I worked relentlessly to establish an absolutely unbreakable legal perimeter. I intentionally isolated myself inside an undisclosed secure apartment building on the outskirts of town to meticulously avoid triggering any unwanted attention. Remaining completely off the grid prevented my family from realizing I was already legally free, plotting my immediate retaliation. While I remained hidden within those quiet walls pacing the wooden floors, Sterling executed a highly confidential maneuver at the federal courthouse. He secretly submitted our comprehensive mountain of undeniable forgery evidence directly to a federal judge during a private emergency hearing. He meticulously walked the magistrate through every single falsified document to demonstrate the sheer magnitude of this unprecedented commercial real estate fraud. Meanwhile, my parents were entirely preoccupied with lavishly squandering my stolen corporate funds to secure the most prestigious ballroom located in downtown Denver. They aggressively booked premium catering services alongside expensive floral arrangements to organize a massive public celebration honoring Brandon. Mom and Dad desperately wanted to officially announce Brandon taking over my entire company, while simultaneously celebrating the complete clearance of his massive underground debts. They genuinely believed their flawless malicious scheme had successfully neutralized my existence while permanently elevating their own social status among the local business elite. Kendra abruptly interrupted my intense strategic planning session by calling my encrypted burner phone to report a highly crucial technological breakthrough regarding the upcoming venue. She had spent the entire morning aggressively bypassing the digital security protocols governing the audiovisual equipment at the targeted luxury hotel. The central server system of the ballroom has been completely compromised, so I can instantly broadcast any video file onto their massive projector screen, she confirmed triumphantly. Having that specific digital control granted us the ultimate power to publicly expose their darkest secrets in front of their wealthy investors. We finalized the exact chronological sequence of the security footage to ensure maximum psychological impact when the devastating truth finally hit the screen. We also maintained continuous parallel communication with elite financial investigators throughout the entire afternoon to meticulously map out the exact money laundering trajectory. I systematically provided the federal authorities with highly detailed banking statements proving unequivocally that the newly acquired mortgage funds were flowing straight into notorious criminal organizations. These specific bank transfers perfectly illustrated how my family utilized my legitimate corporate identity to wash illegal money for violent loan sharks. The investigators finally possessed the exact digital paper trail necessary to officially classify this real estate theft as a major federal racketeering operation. Watching those government agents build an airtight criminal case against my own flesh and blood brought a profound sense of cold satisfaction to my exhausted mind. Sterling walked into my secure living room later that evening carrying a thick leather briefcase holding the absolute destruction of my entire family. He sat down heavily onto the sofa before looking directly across the coffee table to deliver his final professional confirmation. The federal criminal arrest warrants have been officially approved by the judge, so we are simply waiting for your explicit signal at the party to execute them, he stated calmly. Hearing those specific words verbally confirmed that the irreversible legal machinery was finally locked into motion without any possibility of cancellation. The comprehensive asset freezing orders alongside the severe criminal warrants rested securely inside his locked briefcase, resembling a highly explosive ticking time bomb. We deliberately chose to hold these devastating legal documents back until the precise moment my family felt the most invincible on their stolen pedestal. I wanted them to completely believe they had successfully pulled off the ultimate corporate heist before ripping the very floorboards out from underneath their dancing feet. Every single trap was perfectly set in place to ensure neither Brandon nor my parents could ever escape the horrifying legal consequences of stealing my life. Exactly at 8 o'clock on Saturday evening, the heavy mahogany double doors of the royal ballroom swung open just as Dad proudly raised his crystal glass to toast the glorious rebirth of our family. The lavish venue was filled with the gentle sounds of clinking glasses mingling with elegant live jazz music before my sudden arrival instantly murdered the celebratory atmosphere. I confidently stepped into the massive hall, causing an immediate wave of absolute shock among the hundreds of prestigious corporate guests gathered around the catered tables. My cold gaze slowly swept across the crowded room until it locked directly onto the utterly pale faces of Brandon alongside Mom standing near the VIP section. The arrogant smiles completely melted off their terrified faces as they stared at the supposedly imprisoned daughter casually crashing their highly exclusive corporate celebration. Dad frantically attempted to regain his shattered composure by quickly stepping down from the illuminated main podium to furiously shout at the confused hotel event staff. "Where is the security team to drag this fugitive criminal out of here right now before she completely ruins our private business party?" he aggressively demanded while pointing a trembling finger at me. Several imposing security guards began moving cautiously across the polished dance floor, but abruptly halted their advance when a massive visual disruption occurred overhead. Exactly at that highly volatile moment, Kendra remotely bypassed the audiovisual security protocols to inject our original surveillance footage directly into the central projector system. Instead of displaying a promotional corporate presentation praising my family, the massive digital screen behind the stage vividly broadcasted a crystal-clear midnight recording. The undeniable high-definition video clearly showed Brandon suspiciously creeping around the dimly lit company parking lot, wearing a dark hooded jacket that everyone knew belonged to him. Every single person in that room watched him violently forcing the illegal contraband deep into my car trunk, while frequently looking over his shoulder to avoid detection. The entire ballroom fell into a deafening silence, while I calmly walked up the carpeted stairs to commandeer the main microphone from my paralyzed father. The comprehensive federal asset freezing order officially took effect earlier this afternoon, meaning your entire corporate loan portfolio is nothing but a fraudulent pile of garbage, I declared with absolute unwavering authority. I swiftly opened my leather briefcase to distribute the authenticated court injunctions directly onto the front tables occupied by the most senior banking executives in the city. Every single hope my family held regarding their upcoming investment capital was instantly crushed. The second those powerful financial partners read the undeniable federal forgery charges, the detailed legal documents explicitly outlined how they manipulated my stolen identity to secure illegal mortgages under the guise of legitimate commercial development. Those wealthy investors immediately recognized they were actively being conned into funding a massive money laundering operation designed exclusively to pay off violent underground criminals. Complete chaos rapidly consumed the elegant venue as furious credit directors immediately grabbed their cell phones to frantically contact their respective corporate legal departments. They loudly demanded the immediate cancellation of all pending fund disbursements while aggressively rushing toward the exit doors to distance themselves from this massive criminal scandal. The previously glamorous ballroom transformed into an absolute nightmare of shouting executives, tearing up their preliminary investment contracts right in front of my family. Brandon dropped his expensive champagne flute onto the marble floor, where it shattered into countless sharp pieces perfectly mirroring his completely destroyed future. My parents were left standing completely frozen in absolute terror upon the shattered ruins of their stolen stage, while their fraudulent empire disintegrated before their very eyes. 96 hours after that disastrous corporate party, the piercing sirens of economic police vehicles violently tore through the absolute silence of the upscale neighborhood where my family lived. Because our secret federal investigation had been actively proceeding for several weeks prior to the event, the authorities did not waste any time launching a massive tactical raid on their luxurious residential mansion. Dozens of heavily armed officers swiftly breached the decorative front doors to physically handcuff Brandon, while officially charging him with severe contraband possession alongside massive corporate fraud. He aggressively fought against the arresting officers while screaming my name in absolute terror until they forcefully shoved him into the back of a heavily armored transport vehicle. Mom completely panicked after witnessing her precious youngest child being hauled away like a common street criminal under the glaring morning sun while all their wealthy neighbors watched. She frantically drove straight to the Central Police Precinct, hoping to find me waiting there with a miraculous legal solution to successfully save her son from his impending doom. She desperately grabbed my coat sleeves while sobbing uncontrollably in the middle of the crowded precinct lobby in front of dozens of staring strangers. Please withdraw the federal lawsuit immediately because Brandon simply cannot survive inside a maximum security prison environment. She hysterically begged while practically dropping to her knees on the dirty floor. I stood completely motionless while looking down at her pathetic theatrical display, using the absolute coldest stare I could possibly muster from the depths of my soul. I slowly pulled my fabric away from her grasping hands before delivering the exact same ruthless verdict they had previously handed to me during my darkest hour. Just let him stay in jail because I will absolutely not bail him out just to teach him a necessary lesson. I replied with chilling calmness before turning my back to walk away forever. The devastating legal consequences rapidly multiplied when the major commercial banks immediately initiated emergency protocols to recall their massive, unauthorized loans without granting any extension periods. The senior banking directors officially discovered irrefutable evidence, proving the mortgage applications contained severe criminal fraud directly linked to notorious underworld money laundering operations. This catastrophic financial breach prompted the federal regulators to immediately seal my parents' primary residence, while initiating aggressive foreclosure proceedings within that exact same week. Heavily armed federal agents aggressively taped legal notices across their beautiful mahogany front doors, preventing them from ever stepping foot inside that property again. The deeply corrupt public notary rapidly crumbled under the immense psychological pressure applied by federal financial investigators during his intense custodial interrogation at the main headquarters. He cowardly decided to save himself by fully confessing the entire illegal bribery operation orchestrated by my desperate parents to steal my legitimate commercial assets. The terrified official provided the prosecuting attorneys with detailed chronological ledgers, proving exactly how he systematically forged my legal signature across multiple corporate property transfers. His undeniable sworn testimony served as the final lethal nail sealing the legal coffins of everyone involved in this malicious property theft. My parents were officially served with immediate federal eviction notices, forcing them to permanently vacate the luxurious property they had proudly occupied for over 2 entire decades. Federal marshals stood closely watching them as they humiliatingly stuffed their remaining personal belongings into a few shabby plastic bags instead of their expensive designer luggage. The two defeated elders silently walked out of their magnificent marble foyer for the final time, while local news cameras aggressively recorded their spectacular public downfall for the evening broadcast. They officially lost absolutely everything they had previously stolen, using those ruthlessly cruel tactics to systematically destroy my life. 6 entire months after the final judicial sentencing hearing officially concluded, I stood quietly on the elevated rooftop of my newly acquired corporate headquarters, located directly in downtown Denver. The crisp evening breeze brushed against my face while I overlooked the sprawling city skyline that I finally conquered through relentless determination. Brandon ultimately received a devastating 15-year federal prison sentence without any possibility of early parole because of his insatiable greed. He permanently destroyed his own future prospects through his reckless criminal behavior, combined with the incredibly toxic enabling provided by my parents. The federal judge explicitly condemned his malicious actions before locking him away in a maximum security facility where his arrogant entitlement holds zero value. Richard, alongside Susan, currently struggle to survive using meager government welfare checks inside a heavily dilapidated public housing complex situated far outside the city limits. They permanently carry the severe public disgrace of a massive credit fraud conviction that will absolutely never be erased from their permanent records. Their former wealthy friends immediately abandoned them the exact second the explosive legal scandal hit the front pages of the local financial newspapers. They spend their miserable days isolated inside a tiny, cramped apartment, constantly blaming each other for the spectacular collapse of their fraudulent empire. I successfully restored my absolute legal control over the commercial real estate development company after terminating every single fraudulent contract they previously created. I aggressively expanded our corporate operations before officially launching the highly lucrative suburban development project that instantly generated massive financial profits for my firm. The massive commercial zoning approval passed without any further complications, allowing my company to dominate the local real estate market with unprecedented success. I officially promoted Kendra to the prestigious position of Executive Vice President to reward her unwavering loyalty during my darkest hour inside that prison cell. She quickly became my most trusted business associate, while remaining the absolute only true family member I genuinely rely upon for the challenging journey ahead. We smoothly rebuilt the organizational structure to ensure absolute operational security against any future attempts of corporate espionage or financial manipulation. The lucrative land deal generated enough surplus capital to acquire 3 additional commercial properties across the state borders. My professional reputation skyrocketed among the elite banking institutions who witnessed my ruthless efficiency in dismantling a massive financial fraud ring. I routinely received desperate letters from the federal penitentiary containing pathetic apologies from Brandon begging for a legal appeal or financial commissary support. I systematically forward every single unopened envelope directly to the corporate incinerator without shedding a single tear for his miserable, incarcerated existence. I established an incredibly strict personal boundary that permanently bans any form of communication with the people who callously threw me to the wolves. Despite standing victorious at the absolute pinnacle of my professional career after achieving flawless legal justice, I still recognize the heavy emotional toll. I clearly understand that the profound psychological scars inflicted by the ultimate betrayal of my own flesh blood will simply never fully heal. The painful realization that the very people who brought me into this world actively tried to destroy my existence remains a heavy burden. I simply chose to transform that agonizing betrayal into an impenetrable armor protecting my hard-earned empire from any future malicious threats. Walking away from my toxic relatives was unequivocally the most agonizing decision of my life, but it ultimately became my ultimate salvation. I finally found genuine peace, knowing I successfully secured my own freedom while letting them drown in the exact same toxic poison they prepared for me. The profound silence inside my luxurious penthouse no longer feels lonely because it represents the beautiful tranquility of total independence. I survived the absolute worst betrayal imaginable to emerge as a formidable force who refuses to ever become a victim again. Production statement: the Revenge Mode production team explicitly designed this narrative for educational purposes regarding personal boundary enforcement. We strive to effectively demonstrate how victims must handle severe family crises utilizing cold logic alongside precise legal action instead of pure emotional reactions. Action assessment: the protagonist demonstrated remarkable psychological resilience by decisively terminating all contact with her toxic relatives to permanently protect her hard-earned assets. The malicious antagonists ultimately suffered the inevitable catastrophic consequences, resulting directly from their own greedy decisions regarding the fraudulent property theft. Their total financial destruction represents the perfectly balanced outcome of their unforgivable betrayal. Core lessons: sharing a biological bloodline does not automatically guarantee genuine loyalty or unconditional love during times of severe personal crisis. You possess absolutely zero obligation to continuously sacrifice your own hard-earned success to rescue toxic relatives from their self-inflicted disasters. The most devastating form of revenge never requires violent outbursts or screaming matches fueled by chaotic emotional instability. True retaliation involves silently gathering undeniable legal evidence to completely dismantle your enemies within the strict confines of the justice system. Establishing impenetrable personal boundaries remains the most crucial survival skill required to protect your mental health from manipulative family members. You must value your own self-respect enough to permanently walk away from anyone who views your existence simply as a disposable financial resource. Gratitude and call to action. The entire production team sincerely thanks you for patiently listening to the very end of this thrilling story on the Revenge Mode channel. How would you personally handle this devastating situation if you discovered your own family orchestrated such a malicious financial trap? Please share your sharpest perspectives down in the comment section below before hitting that subscribe button for upcoming videos.